will go from there. So thank you guys very much for joining today's webinar. My name is Dr. Dieter, and I want to start by asking you guys, just a simple question. If you're joining this, we do this webinar 3 times a week, Sunday, Monday, and Friday at the same time every time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. If you're joining one of these webinars today for the first time, drop a comment in the chat, one, as in number one, meaning your first time joining. So I have a sense of who my audience is, and so I can tailor my presentation, having a sense of how many first timers are joining us today. Okay. Um, Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So the other question I'm going to ask, especially to our first timers, if somebody were to tell you that, are you aware of the fact that chronic diseases like diabetes, like high blood pressure, like high cholesterol, like sleep apnea are 100% reversible? If somebody told you that, if you heard that, will that be surprising to you? Or will that be something not surprising to you at all? If it's surprising to you, drop a comment surprise or surprising. If it's not, just drop a comment not. Again, I want to gauge what you guys know about, chronic disease so as to tailor my presentation. Well, thank you guys for your answers, and I hope to through this talk through very simple education, really illuminate you, open your eyes to the fact that chronic medical conditions are indeed reversible. And I have been living as a physician, I've been living in this cloud, not knowing that truth, until this year when my eyes opened to the fact that, most of our chronic diseases are reversible. And I am now on a crusade to tell as many people as possible, that they can reclaim their health again. So, without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and then we will begin this. We will begin this. Okay. All right, so I'll again reintroduce myself. My name is Dr. Dieter. I'm a board certified internist as well as a board certified pediatrician. So I hold those two board certifications. And in the last couple of years, I've now become very, very passionate about what we call metabolic health and holistic health. And so in today's presentation, what I plan to do is to be able to take you guys to understand how most of our chronic medical conditions that we face today are rooted in, what we call metabolic dysfunction. And this slide just says just that. So I began by asking the question to you guys, if it surprises you to hear that chronic medical conditions are reversible. And most of you put in surprise. And we now have reputable science that shows that most of the chronic medical conditions that we face today come from two things. And those two things are what we call insulin resistance and microbiome dysfunction. Those two things result in what we call metabolic dysfunction, and the metabolic dysfunction then results in chronic medical conditions. I'm gonna go from the bottom here to up just to explain this. So, most, if not all, of the chronic medical conditions that we face today come from metabolic dysfunction. And when we talk about metabolic dysfunction, to be able to understand what metabolic dysfunction is important to understand what metabolism is. Metabolism is just simply how the body makes and uses energy. When we eat, the food that is trapped, the energy that is trapped in the food, our body converts that food energy into cellular energy. that it is needed for our cells to function smoothly. So metabolism is the conversion of food energy into cellular energy, or you could put it in another way, how the body makes and uses energy. So we say you have metabolic dysfunction when the body cannot make energy well or use energy well, or when the body cannot harness the energy from food into cellular energy. We say when any of those is the case, we say you have metabolic dysfunction. And now, a simple definition and metabolic dysfunction then results in disease conditions. A very simple definition for disease is a malfunctioning, it's a malfunction of the cell. You see, our bodies are made of cells. Cells group together to form tissues, tissues to form organs, organs to form systems. So the smallest entity, of the functioning body is the cell. So a disease, a very simple definition for a disease is a malfunction in the cell. And a malfunction comes as a result of metabolic dysfunction, which is energy deficiency. And now there is now science that shows that that energy deficiency, for the purpose of this presentation, anytime you hear me talk about metabolic dysfunction, replace that with a layman's definition as energy deficiency. So we now have strong scientific evidence that insulin resistance and microbiome dysfunction are the two main players that result in energy deficiency, metabolic dysfunction, and that energy deficiency then results in disease. So what I want to do is I want to isolate each of them, and talk about them individually. Let's isolate insulin resistance and talk about insulin resistance first, and how insulin resistance then translates into energy deficiency and diseases. To be able to understand what insulin resistance is, it is very important to understand what insulin does in the first place. So, insulin is a hormone, and insulin is a very, very critical hormone in our existence. In fact, I call insulin hormone numero uno in terms of importante. There is no hormone that is more important than insulin. Think about insulin as being the CEO of a company that dictates the structure, sits right there at the tip. Without insulin dictating the structure, the company does not run smoothly. It is so pivotal, it is so central in our metabolism, in our energy production, and as a result, determines how everything flows in our body. Why? One of the things that I failed to mention is that we need energy, for all our cells to function, and insulin helps to secure that energy. That's why it's so important. So, to understand what insulin resistance is, let me take you through what the job of insulin is. The job of insulin, which is a hormone that is produced, by the pancreas, is to mobilize glucose out of the blood into the cell. So glucose is mobilized out of the blood into the cell. So when we eat, the byproduct of absorption, whatever we eat goes through our colon. Absorption occurs is the release of glucose. Glucose is released into the blood. When that glucose is released in the blood, the job of insulin right here is to mobilize that glucose out of the blood into the cell. When glucose now gets into the cell, glucose is channeled, or shunted into the mitochondria. You've heard that the mitochondria, some of you here have a science background, that the mitochondria is a powerhouse of the cell. So when glucose enters the cell, it is shunted into the mitochondria. Glucose then now goes through a complex series of reactions called the electron transport chain, with the end result of the release of energy, an energy molecule called ATP. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. And for the purpose of simplicity, just recognize it as an energy molecule. So why is insulin hormone numero uno in terms of importante? Because it sits at that pinnacle. It helps in energy production. So without insulin, we do not have energy. So that's why insulin is so critical. And every cell in the body requires energy to function. Every single cell requires energy to function. And when there is an energy deficiency in a cell, that cell malfunctions. The simple definition for disease is a cell that has malfunctioned. It's not acting right. So that's the job of insulin. Now, what then is insulin resistance? Insulin resistance then is when you have a breakdown in this process. Anywhere where there is a breakdown in this process of insulin, and I'm going to write breakdown here, anywhere where there is a breakdown in this process of insulin mobilizing glucose into the cell so that energy can be produced, we say you have insulin resistance. And now, when you have insulin resistance, you have a breakdown in that process, you have a dysfunction of the cell, then you now have diseases. Remember, insulin helps to secure the energy of the cell. When you have insulin working well, you produce ATP. When there's energy deficiency, that energy deficiency results in a malfunctioning of the cell, and you now develop diseases. So this is a slide here that is a depiction of the fact that insulin sits central at these diseases. And these diseases are not, unfortunately, are not the end of the list. I cannot put up a slide here that contains all the diseases today in our world, linked to insulin resistance. It is too long of a disease. And I would just want to pick out one or two of these diseases here for simplicity to illustrate how it's linked to insulin resistance. Let's talk about the link between insulin resistance and cancer. You see, some of you, it may surprise you to find out that, cancer is not bad luck. A lot of people, when they hear, oh, this person got diagnosed with cancer, or this and that, they think it's bad luck. I have breaking news for you. Cancer discriminates against those who have metabolic dysfunction coming from insulin resistance. Cancer discriminates against those who have energy deficiency. That's another simpler way to put it. You may think that when you have cancer is bad luck. It's not bad luck. Let me explain to you two processes that are in the body that are protective processes against cancer. Our DNA, right? Our DNA is a double helix like this. This is how the DNA is. And the DNA contains genes in there, and the genes in the DNA, kind of are the code to help what enzyme is going to be produced, what neurotransmitter is going to be produced, what protein is going to be produced, and what have you. So those genes are the code that determines what the body is going to produce. So the way the body produces the proteins it needs, whether it's enzymes, whether it's hormones, whether it's neurotransmitters, whatever it needs for the functioning of the body, there is a process called protein synthesis. And for protein synthesis to occur, it requires, so think about the DNA wound like this. For protein synthesis to occur, it requires unwinding of the DNA to expose, so the DNA unwinds. It may not unwind fully, it may unwind right here, and the remainder of this is not wound, to expose these genes, and then a complex process of protein synthesis occurs to produce whatever the body needs. So the DNA is frequently winding, unwinding, winding, unwinding. You will know that anything that goes through a repeated process, there is wear and tear. So wear and tear can occur in our DNA and results in maybe mutations in the DNA, winding and unwinding. The body has a process in place to repair DNA that is damaged from wear and tear. And that process of repair of DNA requires energy. I want you guys to understand this, that every process in the body requires energy. And when you have energy deficiency because of insulin resistance, you do not have enough energy, ATP, to go and cause the repair of that damaged DNA. That damaged DNA goes unrepaired, it now propagates into a cancer. As simple as that. A lot of adult diseases are metabolic discriminants, meaning they are going to come after people who have energy deficiency. But I want to take another one, just high blood pressure, and make this point. High blood pressure is directly linked to energy deficiency. How is that? We generate our blood pressure from our arteries. This is the artery, and we generate our blood pressure from the arteries. The artery is supposed to, the artery looks like this. Let's do that. We generate our blood pressure from the artery. Now, in the walls of our artery is a very spacious cell called the endothelial cell. The endothelial cell lines, the inner part of the artery. I'll put in a little nucleus here to say it's a cell. And the job of this endothelial cell is to produce a very special signaling molecule called nitric oxide. Okay. The job of nitric oxide is to cause in medicine, what we call vasodilation. So the job of nitric oxide is to go and push out the walls of the arteries, for the walls of the arteries to expand. So nitric oxide causes the diameter of the arteries to be pushed out. And guess what, guys? This cell that makes nitric oxide, it could only make nitric oxide in an energy sufficient state. When there is a deficiency of energy, metabolic dysfunction because of insulin resistance, there is insufficient ATP energy available. When there is insufficient ATP available, this cell cannot make enough nitric oxide to secure vasodilation of the cell. So normally, when this cell produces nitric oxide, this is how this artery now will look. This artery vasodilates and has a larger diameter, so the pressure in that artery is low. But in an energy deficient state, so you have normal blood pressure here because of a wider pipe. In an energy deficient state, unfortunately, what happens, because there is not enough nitric oxide production, because there is not enough ATP to ensure the endothelial cell can produce a sufficient amount of nitric oxide. If nitric oxide was supposed to cause the diameter of the cell to secure the diameter of the artery to be yay big, right? If nitric oxide was supposed to secure the diameter of the artery to be yay big, and you do not have enough nitric oxide, and so the diameter of the artery instead is yay big, it's a smaller diameter, higher blood pressure. And you have that high blood pressure because of energy deficiency. So, in the interest of time, I could not go through all of these diseases, but I wanted to point to you how, insulin resistance is at the core of most of our chronic diseases as a result of energy deficiency. The, the second thing we should isolate is the dysbiosis, microbiome dysfunction. You may not know it, but in our gut, are 30 to 100 trillion bacteria. 30 to 100 trillion bacteria. And the 30 to 100 trillion bacteria in our gut is what we call the microbiome. 30 to 100 trillion bacteria. And they have varying functions. Some of those functions is to break down fiber. Another function is to protect the gut from pathogenic bacteria. Pathogenic just simply means disease-causing bacteria. And it does so by producing the bacteria, does so by in our gut, the microbiome does so by producing, a very special fatty acid called a short chain fatty acid. Short chain fatty acids are essential fatty acids that maintain the security and integrity of our gut. You cannot get short chain fatty acids from fish oil or from any kind of food or whatever you. It is only produced and produced by the gut. Now, our gut is lined, the cells of our gut are joined together, one after the other. Think about, your colon, the cells joined together, and the tightness here, where they are joined together, this junction is called a tight junction. And the short chain fatty acids go and they are the checkpoints right here. They go and make sure that this tight junction of the gut is tight enough.
Yeah, how are you, boss?
Is tight enough, and so that you don't develop a weakness in the wall of the gut and bacteria seeping into the gut. So that's how they protect the gut from disease causing bacteria by producing that. The microbiome also helps to it helps to train the immune system. You may not know it, but 70% of the body's immune system resides in the gut. 70% resides in the gut. The other 30% of our immune system resides in our bone marrow, lymph nodes, lymphatics, whatever you, but 70% resides in the gut. And the microbiome, which are these 30 to 100 trillion bacteria, their job is to train the immune system. So when you have a healthy gut microbiome, it trains the immune system in a healthy way to say, hey, when you see so and so bacteria, that guy is a bad guy. Pull out this bullet, hit him hard with this bullet, take him out. Don't ask any questions. And then when you see this other guy, hey, that is a friendly guy. That's not the enemy. Do not shoot that guy. Do not target that guy at all. That's what a healthy training by the microbiome to our immune system is. When our microbiome is unhealthy, which I'll explain to you how the microbiome becomes unhealthy, it trains the immune system to be trigger happy, to be hypersensitive. It's just ready to shoot first, ask questions later. So it tells the immune system, you see that bacteria, he's a bad guy. Shoot him. If you see any other thing that just looks and smells like a bacteria, shoot first and ask questions later. So it may see a cell of the body that is not a bacteria causing no harm, because the immune system is now hyper vigilant because of a poor, a weak microbiome. It now attacks the cells of the body. Oh, the microbiome told me when I see this guy that looks like a bacteria, even if I'm not sure, don't ask questions, just shoot. So a poor microbiome causes the immune system to be trained to attack itself, and therein lies the production of autoimmune diseases like Hashimoto's, lupus, and what have you. And the last thing that the microbiome does is to help us in the synthesis of B vitamins and K vitamins. So now, very important functions of the microbiome. We're supposed to live in a symbiotic relationship with this 30 to 100 trillion organisms. We do for them, they do for us. What we do for them, we're supposed to provide them food and shelter, and they're supposed to help us with all of these functions. What then is microbiome dysfunction? When we talk about microbiome dysfunction, it's simply this microbiome dysfunction. The bacteria in our gut live in equilibrium with each other. Like there's good bacteria and bad bacteria. They all live in the same proportion. One is not more than the other. So of a 50-50 coexistence. So the bad bacteria and the good bacteria all keeping each other in equilibrium in check. We say you have dysbiosis or microbiome dysfunction when the bad bacteria outnumber the good bacteria and the good bacteria low. What causes that to happen? That happens when there is a deficiency of food. You see, the food to the microbiome is fiber. You may wonder, fiber is one of those carbohydrates that God our Maker made in such a way that humans do not have the capability to digest fiber or to obtain any calories from it or to obtain any calories from it. So fiber goes through the microbiome intact, and why is that? Is because it is food to the microbiome. Now, how you develop microbiome dysfunction is when there is a deficiency of food. I like saying this, every living organism, whether it's a lion in the jungle of Africa or a bacteria in your gut, requires nutrients to survive. When there is a shortage of nutrients, which is fiber, what happens is that the bad bacteria, what happens is the survival of the fetus sets in, and the bad bacteria are usually stronger than the good bacteria. So in the survival of the fetus mode, the bad bacteria are going to uh, um, set in and cause hoard the food to try as much as possible to keep the food for themselves, and as a result proliferate to hoard that food. So that's how you have an imbalance with the bad bacteria now too much and the good bacteria low. And fiber is food for the microbiome. Unfortunately, we do not consume enough fiber. It is estimated that if you're a man, you're supposed to consume at least 38 grams of fiber a day if you're a man. If you're a woman, it is estimated that you should consume at least 25 grams of fiber a day, if you're a woman. The NIH estimates that the average man and woman in the US consumes 10 to 12 grams of fiber a day because our foods are so processed. Now, when you have a deficiency of fiber, you're not taking in enough fiber, that's what we call microbiome dysfunction, and that results in all of these diseases. You may be surprised to see on here anxiety and depression linked to the microbiome. Why is that? That is the case because 90% of the body's serotonin, the neurotransmitter that maintains mood, is produced in the gut. 90%. So imagine if you have a sick gut, a gut that is not healthy. It means you're really taking out the factory that produces serotonin. It's no doubt you have anxiety and depression. You have the autoimmune diseases because of a trigger happy immune system that shoots first, asks questions later. Lupus, Hashimoto's. Um, I, um, I do not have celiac is another autoimmune disease. This list again is not exhaustive. You have Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis that are not on there. The point to be made is that when you have an unhealthy gut, it now leads to all of these diseases. Now, if you were to reverse those disease conditions, those energy deficient states, you can reverse the disease again. If the cause of these diseases and the cause of these diseases were the result of energy deficiency, there is now reputable science that shows that when you now reverse that energy deficiency, or that came as a result of insulin resistance or dysbiosis, you reverse the disease condition. Remember, these two things resulted in the deficiency of ATP, low energy. And low energy resulted in malfunction of the cell. Remember, the simple definition for a disease is a malfunctioning cell. Why did the cell malfunction? Because the cell had a deficiency of energy. So I like to use this analogy. Say, for example, you're rolling on the road and your car runs out of gas. When your car runs out of gas, it stops working. And the reason it stops working is not because there is an intrinsic failure of the engine. No, that's not the case. It is actually because the energy source, the gas, that the engine needs to work, is not there. Disease in a cell, energy deficiency results in disease in the cell in the same process. So your car stops. If you walk to a gas station, you buy gas, in the jog and walk back to your car on the side of the road and pump that gas into your car. When you go back and sit in the driver's seat and you turn on the ignition, the car roars back to life again. Why? Because there was not an intrinsic failure of the engine. Its energy source, the gas, was gone. You now restore the energy, the deficiency of energy, the car starts working again. And so it is with the body. There is now strong, reputable science that has been repeated over and over again with many people reversing diabetes, blood pressure, PCOS, what have you, by just reversing or restoring the energy deficiency. And that will be good news. And so that will be good news. And I will say that if you struggle with any chronic medical condition, that chronic medical condition came as a result of low energy, and restoring that low energy, that energy deficiency because of these two things will cause you to have a restoration of your health. I want to go back to insulin resistance. I'm painting a roadmap of how a problem came to be and then give you guys a solution. But in order for you to be able to grasp and understand the solution, it will be important to shed more light into the problem, how this stuff came to be. We talked about insulin resistance, and we said insulin resistance is when you have a breakdown in the process of insulin mobilizing glucose into the cell, mobilizing glucose into the cell to produce energy. When you have a breakdown in that process um, to produce ATP, that breakdown, we said that breakdown was insulin resistance. Okay. Now, how does the breakdown occur? It's important to understand how, if let's say your car had a problem, it stopped working, it broke down on you, you had to take it to the mechanic shop. When you take the car to the mechanic shop, the very first thing the mechanic is going to do, the mechanic is going to try to figure out how the breakdown occurred. Because if the mechanic knows how the breakdown occurred, then the mechanic knows how to fix the problem. We have talked how the breakdown occurs for dysbiosis. The breakdown of dysbiosis occurs by deficiency of fiber. Our foods are so processed, we're not consuming enough fiber. It has led to survival of the fetus, to the strong hoarding the food, overpopulating, and repressing the weak. That's the breakdown of resulting to dysbiosis. The breakdown that leads to insulin resistance occurs in two steps. Important because you have to know how a breakdown occurred to reverse it. And the very first step in the breakdown of insulin resistance, deficiency of, not being able to make energy, is this: too much fat. That's the first step in which the breakdown occurs. And then the first step leads to the second step: too much insulin. And I'm going to explain it to you guys this way. Too much fat and too much insulin is no bueno. You must have heard of the saying, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. Fat is good, but too much fat is bad. You see, we have two sources of energy: glucose and fat. During the daytime, when metabolic demand is high, the body's main source of energy is glucose. At nighttime, when we're sleeping, we're not that active, glucose levels are low. The body has to switch, from glucose. The body has to switch its reliance from glucose to reliance on fat. And so that's why we store fat from every food we eat. For example, I have fat under my biceps right here. The fat that I pinch around here, called the subcutaneous fat, is good fat. It's the only fat that is really good. There are two other types of fat, which are not good. You have fat, visceral fat that lines the organs, and ectopic fat that is inside an organ. Those two types of fat are not good: visceral fat, ectopic fat. The fat that is good that the body calls upon is the subcutaneous fat. So we need fat, all right? But too much fat is not good. And why is too much fat not good? For this reason. Now, let's say that anytime we eat, any excess of the calories that we eat, the body takes any of those excess calories and converts them into fat. The body only needs a certain amount of subcutaneous fat. After that, it doesn't know what to do with the excess fat. So let's say this is a cell. A cell is normally supposed to look like that. And let's say you consume way more calories than you're supposed to. You've consumed way more calories than you're supposed to, and the body takes those excess calories and converts them into fat. And the body doesn't know what to do with those excess calories. What it decides is going to take those excess fat calories and comes and stores the fat in here. Now, that's not a good thing, because this cell now, which was meant to be free and open like that, is now filled with fat, what I call a fat-laden cell. And remember, the job of insulin is to come and knock on the door of this cell or the cell and tell the cell, I need you to take up glucose from the blood. So in a normal situation, insulin is able to mobilize glucose into this cell. You now have a cell because you have consumed way more calories than you're supposed to consume. Those excess calories have been converted into fat. The fat now has gone and been stored in this cell. Wow. When insulin comes to this cell and tells this cell, hey, listen, I have glucose that I need you to take up from the blood so that ATP energy can be produced. The cell tells insulin, well, are you kidding me? I'm so full. I have no room in the inn. Don't you see how pregnant with fat I am? Like, where do you expect me to put this glucose that you're asking me to? So the cell tells insulin no and does not open its doors to glucose. And as a result, if glucose doesn't enter the cell, glucose doesn't go through that complex series of reactions to result in ATP, you have an energy deficiency, which is insulin resistance. You have a breakdown in that. And what this cell is doing is, this cell is just simply trying to protect its poor self from too much calories. If you have ever eaten too much on Thanksgiving and you feel Thanksgiving full, the last thing in the world when you just feel sick in your stomach, I've eaten too much. When you feel Thanksgiving full, the last thing in the world you're thinking about is to put another bite of anything into your mouth. That is how this cell is feeling. This cell feels like it's Thanksgiving full, and the last thing in its world is to open its doors to glucose. And that's why it tells insulin no, it's trying to protect itself. So that's the first step in which you develop insulin resistance. A second step in which you develop insulin resistance is too much insulin. Now, too much fat results in too much insulin. So the first step triggers the problem, the breakdown of the second step. And how does that happen? You see, there is a one-to-one relationship between the concentration of glucose and the concentration of insulin. So you have this cell that is now fat laden and has told insulin, wait, are you kidding? How do you want me to take glucose up from the blood when I'm so fat laden? So it says no, and what happens is that glucose begins to accumulate in the blood, because this cell, that cell is so pregnant, it cannot take up glucose. So glucose is accumulating in the blood because it has closed its doors. When glucose accumulates in the blood, because there is a one-to-one relationship between the concentration of glucose and the secretion of insulin by the pancreas, this high amount of glucose that is accumulating in the blood triggers the pancreas to produce a high amount of insulin. Triggers the pancreas to produce high amount of insulin, and you now have too much insulin. And you, because of the one-to-one relationship, and that too much insulin is produced to try to go and bring this glucose down. But too much insulin is no bueno. Why? Why? Remember that I started by describing as insulin being the CEO of the structure that dictates the structure. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing. When insulin becomes too much as the CEO, imagine a CEO of your company who goes off, who goes cuckoo, who comes to work one day and all of a sudden, he is yelling at people, giving unreasonable demands. He's shouting, he has lost his cool. He's not able to act right. When insulin is high, insulin is acting like a tyrant, a bully. Whereas he was supposed to be that CEO that had a level head that maintained order. He's now become tyrannical, yelling, screaming, and that's kind of gone crazy. And when you have a boss who goes crazy, you know what you do as an employee? You lose your respect for the boss. So when insulin is now too much, the cells lose respect for insulin. If I have a boss who I have lost respect for, it's hard for me to do what that boss tells me to do. The boss may come and say, "Hey, Dr. Dieter, we have this project going on that we have this deadline. Could you see what you can do about it?" I don't got respect for the boss. I'm going to do the project because I don't want to get fired. But instead of giving the project my 100% best, I may give the project 20% best just to get it over the finish line. The boss has not gotten the most out of me because I don't have respect for the boss. Same with the cell. When insulin is too much and acting tyrannical to the cell loses its, because when insulin is too much, it is screaming at the cell to say, "You are gonna do what I ask you to do, the way I want you to do, when I want you to do it. No ifs, no ands, no buts." When the cell loses its respect for insulin, the cell is less likely to do what insulin commands it to do. And what does insulin usually ask the cell to do? "Hey, cell, open your doors so I can let glucose in." So when the cell loses its respect, you know what the cell does? When insulin knocks to say, "Open your doors," the cell clamps its door shut. When the cell clamps its door shut, what happens? More glucose accumulates in the blood. That more glucose that accumulates in the blood is a further trigger for the pancreas to produce even more insulin. And if it was not enough that the boss had gone cuckoo at this level and has now raised their cuckoo-ness to this level, that's what even more insulin does. It's a boss that has become even more erratic. They were like this and now have gone like this. The employees of that boss lose even further respect for boss. Man has gone too low, man. I don't respect him no more. They lose even further respect for the boss. The cells lose further respect for insulin. When the cells lose further respect for insulin, as if their doors were not closed tight, already. They tighten those doorknobs even tighter. And when it does, more glucose accumulates in the blood. It's just, you guys see what I'm trying to paint? It's just this vicious cycle. That more glucose is a trigger for more insulin because of this scenario. So that's how the breakdown in insulin resistance occur. And let me give you guys a solution. There is good news. There is good news because we now have a nutraceutical solution that helps to reverse insulin resistance and helps to reverse dysbiosis. And remember, if you reverse what caused the core of the problem that resulted in the energy deficiency, just like the car that was able to start again when you gave it gas, your cells, the dysfunction that came as a result of lack of energy is restored, disease processes go away. And the solution is this nutraceutical product made by a company called Unicity, which I learned about thanks to my friend Dr. Natasha in March of this year. And this nutraceutical product made by this company, if you're in the you're in the medical field, you may be surprised to learn that this nutraceutical product is listed in the PDL, the physician's desk reference. If you were to go to the physician's desk reference and look for this or this, you're going to find it. So let's talk about each one of them and how they are a solution to reversing insulin resistance and dysbiosis. The first product here is it's called Unamate. It's a tea made from a plant called the yerba mate plant, which is native to the South Americas, Colombia, Argentina, Brazil. 100% natural. When we talk about a nutraceutical product, these two things are what we call nutraceuticals. A nutraceutical, it just simply means a product made 100% from plants that, in addition to having some nutritional value, has a lot of health benefits that outweigh the nutritional value. So that's what a nutraceutical is. So why is the Unamate a tool in helping to reverse insulin resistance? I'll tell you why. It is so because the Unamate contains a very special phytonutrient called chlorogenic acid. Chlorogenic acid. It's a very special phytonutrient, and this phytonutrient has the property of something we call lipolysis. Lipolysis is just a simple, fancy medical term that says fat burning, to burn fat. So the Unamate contains this chlorogenic acid, and this chlorogenic acid causes you to be able to burn fat. Now, how does that help with insulin resistance? Remember that. How does that help reverse insulin resistance? Remember that the first step in developing insulin resistance was a cell that was pregnant with fat, became very fat laden, and when it became fat laden, it will not open its doors to glucose at the command of insulin, and glucose accumulated in the cell. Well, now you introduce a nutraceutical like Unamate that's going to promote lipolysis, fat burning. All of a sudden, when it promotes lipolysis, fat burning, this cell begins to burn the excess fat that was in it that crowded it. It can go to looking like this, less fat, and then subsequently, go back to status quo where there's no fat in it. So lipolysis has now cleared the cell and freed it of all the fat that was in it. You now have all this space back in the cell where now when insulin comes and knocks on the door of this cell and tells this cell to take up glucose, the cell says, I'll be happy too. I now have room in the inn. It starts excitingly taking up the glucose from the blood, because it now has room in the inn, reversing insulin resistance. Remember, any breakdown in glucose mobilizing in insulin mobilizing glucose into the cell is insulin resistance. So you see the reversal of the breakdown by lipolysis. And that's what happens because of the chlorogenic acid, an important phytonutrient in this. The other thing, so that reverses the first step of insulin resistance. And if you will remember, the first step of insulin resistance, too much fat, resulted in too much insulin, the second step. Now, so by default, when you address the first step, it resolves the second step. How is that? You had this cell that was fat laden, and because it was fat laden, it caused glucose to accumulate in the blood. And glucose accumulated in the blood, and the high glucose in the blood became a trigger for too much insulin. Too much insulin was that boss that had become the CEO that had become tyrannical, and the employees had lost respect for the CEO because the CEO had lost his cool head. The cells had lost their respect for insulin. And as a result, the cells were not taking up glucose from the blood. Now, what happens is that when lipolysis occurs and this cell now returns to this level, where the cell is now free, you now have glucose starts to enter the cell. When glucose enters the cell, the concentration of glucose in the blood drops to low. When the concentration of glucose in the blood drops to low, because there's a one-to-one relationship between glucose concentration and insulin secretion, that too much insulin now, the pancreas now does not see any reason to produce the same amount of insulin. It now drops its insulin levels down to low. Low insulin is like that boss who was a tyrant and bully who had gone cuckoo, who now returns level-headed and goes to his employees and say, hey, I know I've been a jerk for the past 1 to 2 months now, giving you guys unreasonable demands, yelling and this and that. I am sorry. Will you forgive me? The boss now demonstrates humility, a level head. All of a sudden the employees gain their respect back for that CEO. The CEO is now able to dictate structure and functioning back. Same thing, when the levels of insulin now drop to low, insulin stops being a tyrant, a bully, an unreasonable CEO to the cells. The cells now gain their respect for insulin and are now able to let even more insulin enter the cell. And those two things cause a reversal in insulin resistance. The other thing is that the other product in this is a fiber product. And fiber helps to reverse insulin resistance by exactly the same mechanism. It triggers lipolysis, which addresses the first step of insulin resistance, reverses the first step, and by default reverses the second step. The other thing that fiber does, which is very important, is that fiber decreases our glycemic index. So why is that? Fiber slows down the transit of food through the colon. So through the colon, the GI tract. So if food was supposed to move through the GI tract by this speed, fiber causes food to move through the GI tract by this speed. The slow movement, the slow transit of food through the GI tract results in slow absorption. Slow absorption results in slow release of glucose into the blood. The opposite is true. The fast transit of food through the GI tract without fiber results in fast absorption, fast release of glucose into the blood. And this has implications in a difference in glycemic index. And I'll explain it this way. Let's say you and I went to um, an Italian restaurant to have dinner. We're both feeling like lasagna. We both go to an Italian restaurant to have dinner. So I know a thing or two about fiber. I know that the Unicity product contains fiber. This contains fiber from 5 different plants, and that fiber is going to decrease my glycemic index. You don't know what you don't know. So we go to the restaurant, we both order a plate of lasagna. We order a plate of lasagna, and you eat your plate of lasagna without consuming, the balanced product, which is fiber. I know a thing or two, so I consume a balanced product. This is what your blood sugar will do when you consume your lasagna without fiber. Okay, your blood sugar may do this, and that peak in your blood sugar may be, say, a blood sugar of 180. So for me, I know a thing or two about fiber, and I know that fiber is going to blunt my glycemic index because it's going to slow the transit of food through the colon. Instead of so I consume the balanced product and I eat the same amount of lasagna that you eat, exactly the same. What my blood sugar is going to do is my blood sugar is going to do this. And maybe that blood sugar there may be a blood sugar of 90. So you and I have eaten the same plate of lasagna, exactly the same. But because I have protected my colon or my GI tract by introducing fiber more, it has blunted my glycemic index and caused me to have a lower blood sugar compared to you. Now, why is that important? Remember the one-to-one relationship between glucose secretion and insulin secretion. When you produce more glucose, the pancreas is going to have to produce a commensurate higher amount of insulin to deal with that glucose. So for you, after eating that plate, your pancreas may decide it needs to produce 20 units of insulin, to deal with that blood sugar of 180. For me, my pancreas may decide that it only needs to produce a commensurate lower amount of insulin to deal with that glucose. It may decide that it only needs to produce 5 units. I want you guys to think about it like this. High insulin is like that boss that had gone cuckoo, the CEO that had gone cuckoo. Low insulin is like the level headed CEO. When your insulin levels are running high, it pushes you towards insulin resistance. A lower tone insulin gains more respect by the cells, than a higher tone insulin. And that's how fiber is so important in this fight in reversing metabolic dysfunction and insulin resistance. The last thing is that I'll say this, just stay on this. Last thing is that because insulin is an anabolic hormone, when you consume more, when you produce more insulin than I did, you're going to gain more calories than I did. Insulin causes the storage of calories. So you and I have eaten exactly the same plate of lasagna, but because you produce 20 units of insulin and I produce 5, from this plate of lasagna, you may gain 950 calories. Because I only produce 5 units of insulin. From this plate of lasagna, I may only gain maybe say 350 calories. Huge, huge implications. Lastly, fiber is food to the microbiome. We touched on that already. How to reverse dysbiosis. Fiber is food to the microbiome. Every living organism, whether it's a lion in the jungles of Africa or a bacteria in your gut, needs food, nutrients. In the shortage of nutrients, the bad bacteria, survival of the fetus sets in, they grow, hoard the limited food that is there, and push out the good bacteria. Remember that our foods are so processed that we're not consuming enough fiber. So that is the solution. And I go back and say this. Yes, these are chronic diseases that result in metabolic dysfunction. These diseases, guys, if we had a time machine, right, and went back 100 years, in the time machine, our ancestors will not know what type 2 diabetes is. Our ancestors will not know what PCOS is, high blood pressure. Why? Because the way we live our lives today with how we eat, has resulted in insulin resistance and dysbiosis causing all of these things. But we now know what the cause is. So because we now know what the cause is, it is on us to fix it. We can no longer live in ignorance, knowing that if you can reverse the core problem, you could reverse the disease. And that should be good news to anyone who suffers from any chronic medical condition, disease. The simple definition of disease is a malfunctioned cell. The reason the cell malfunctioned is energy deficiency, metabolic dysfunction. You restore the energy deficiency, your cells roll back to life again. So thank you. I hope this was informative. I'm going to now hand it over to Amory or Dr. Kenny to moderate and take it from there. And I'll stop sharing my screen. And thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Thank you. That was amazing. What I'm going to do is have a view of some of people who have been using this system. Dr. Kenny and I are going to walk you through a couple of them, have a couple of people speak. The first thing that I want to start off with is just showing you some examples. When you use this system, here's what has happened to regular, real people. The first real person you may recognize, this is our speaker tonight, Dr. Dieter. If you can imagine, this is couch potato Dr. Dieter before he discovered intermittent fasting. The picture in the middle is 5 years of intermittent fasting and jogging, and now he's a jogger. The final picture is this same guy, not really jogging as much as he was, but 2.5 months on this system with the Unimate and the fiber. This is how quickly your body changes. The inflammation that you don't realize that you're holding and carrying just literally evaporates. Dr. Kinney, our other speaker, went from this hospital bed to discovering this system shortly after he got out. The difference between these two pictures is a little over 30 days, if you can put your head around that. This is how quickly intermittent fasting, fiber, and the chlorogenic acid can work in a system. This is our friend Kimberly. This is 60 days between the first picture and the second picture, 60 days, where she got a lot of the inflammation out. She's feeling better, aches and pains already starting to resolve. I forgot to warn you. The next picture is of a diabetes foot ulcer. This is a gentleman, Keith. I'm gonna skip a little bit first to Keith. This is Keith. Keith was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes when he was 30 years old, and so 25 years diabetic, 90% of that he was on insulin dependent diabetic. He got this foot ulcer that actually killed him. He went septic. They had to resuscitate him. They could put a glove on and touch a bone in there. He couldn't feel his feet because of neuropathy. Uh, when he had when he started using this system, he stopped going through McDonald's and instead drank the Unimate in the morning, and then he had a meal, dinner in the evening. By day number 2, he was off 108 units of insulin and has not used insulin since then. So we are starting to you see this significant change. This is really interesting. This actually is Scott's friend, I learned. This is just a couple of months on the system, fingers going like this, which I had never really seen in association with insulin resistance. But on the system, his fingers cleared up, and this is in just a couple of months. Our NFL football player, this guy's almost 7 feet tall, he's about 6'9". Jonathan Scott, he lost 50 pounds in 50 days. You can see by those broad shoulders, he's an NFL lineman and was struggling with severe depression, anxiety. He used the system and changed his life. He had joy. He was able to recoup, re-engage with his life. He had psoriasis covering his entire head, neck, and had had this for as long as he can remember most of his adult life. We don't have a picture of his psoriasis, but I want to show you a picture. This is about 6 months, a 6-year-old woman who had psoriasis that she was a teenager. And at 63, she started using the Feel Great system. She's type 2 diabetic. These things go together, psoriasis and insulin resistance. She was able to completely clear up her skin for the first time in her life on the system. She also added omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin D to clear that up. This is a nurse. Roe was able to reverse her type 2 diabetes. If you saw this person, you wouldn't recognize that this was the same person. Reversal of type 2 diabetes, we get to see this all the time. A1C from 12 down to 4.8. And with that comes blood pressure meds, IBS resolution in days. People who have had IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, for 10 years are reporting that in a couple of days they no longer have IBS and they never have it again. Acid reflux, migraines, insomnia, down 2 pant sizes and 2 shirt sizes, completely off all meds. Helped his mother reverse type 2 diabetes, his mother-in-law, and his wife reverse pre-diabetes. This is Tim. He had A1C of 14, it's really high A1C. He was able to reverse his diabetes, normalize his blood sugar, got off 8 or 9 meds, lost 40 pounds, got rid of brain fogs, aches, and pains. He had retired and wasn't able to do anything in his yard because he was hurting once he started using this. You can see the weight that he lost in his belt. And he then became able to work in his yard and have the retirement that he had dreamed of having. This is my good friend, Dr. Marla, who I'm going to be going on a cruise with in November. In this picture, she was on a cruise, and we call her, it looks like Aunt Mabel here. She shared with us the other night that in this cruise, she was walking up and down the stairs. She had a cane and she was holding on to a rail to get up and down the stairs. Brain fog, her blood work was a mess. She kept posting on Facebook about how exhausted she was. I'm so exhausted. I'm so exhausted. I reached out to her, asked her to try this system. Within 3.5 months, she lost 30 pounds, brain fog gone. She started remembering what room she walked into. She now walks normally, no cane, and is able to care for her. She cares for a 42-year-old adult disabled child. And what's unique about that is they never graduate from high school and go off on their own. She needs to care for this. She needs to be able to care for this person as long as she possibly can. And now she feels like she's gotten years back. When you lose weight with intermittent fasting, you don't have those hanging, you don't need a $10,000 surgery that gets rid of all of that hanging skin, because your body uses something called autophagy, where it actually eats the extra skin as a fuel source. And so when someone loses this, you would think that they would have all this hanging skin that you maybe sometimes see on TikTok. This when you lose weight with fasting, you don't. I want to show you how you can go from a belly this size down to getting rid of that. You can start to see he's starting to thin out, but this cannot be comfortable. This man was just uncomfortable, testosterone issues, struggling with metabolic health down to this. We're seeing the significant, what is that, 4X clothing down to extra large clothing. And people are doing this in like a 6 to 8 month period. We're seeing a very significant change. I know this person, she lives about an hour away from me. Her name's Shannon. She lost 65 pounds. She's a little bitty person. She's not very tall, so carrying 65 pounds on her platform was a lot. And at 55 years old, she normalized her A1C completely changed her life. Her husband as well had a similar weight loss. We get to see this is my husband, how I discovered this system. He went from this to this in about 3 months. And now he's been intermittent fasting for 3 years on the system. People are worried that through intermittent fasting, you're going to lose muscle mass. He has always worked out 3 days a week. He's gone to the gym and lifted weights for as long as I can remember. However, once he started using the system and working out in a fasted state, he's built more muscle mass now than he has ever in his life. He's 54 years old. We see this constant belly fat just eliminated, shrinks away. PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, is the number one cause for women with infertility. This is Dr. Kenny's wife. She was able to reverse PCOS in 2 months, and looks completely different. And I got to hold this baby. This is not my baby, but this is the mom of this little baby. This is baby Sam. She was diagnosed with PCOS when she was 18 years old. She now was 28 years old and unable to conceive a baby. And her mother-in-law got her the Feel Great system, talked her into using it. In 4 months, after 10 years of trying to have a baby, in 4 months on the system, she is pregnant. 9 months later, we all get to hold baby Sam. So those are some stories of lives that are being changed, that we're changing with this protocol and with the system. And I wanted to have a couple of real people also share. I'd like Dr. Festus, Dr. Tiffany, Dr. Festus, I'm gonna add you in and would love to have you unmute, tell your story.
Emery, I want to share something real quick.
Go ahead.
Someone asked this, Regina, and I'm so grateful you brought that up because I was going to share this. We see all these wonderful testimonies, right? And I have a question that I learned from Walt Disney, and Walt Disney would call board meetings. He was very cleanly. It made his parks impeccable. And he would always ask everyone, when do you clean a window? And the board kind of looked at each other like, well, you clean it when it gets sick. See, we're taught in this country and most countries to try to work on your health once you've lost it. Walt said, no, you clean a window while it's clean and you never get sick. So my point of this is I don't have any issues any longer. I don't think Dr. Dieter does, Anne-Marie, and we want to stay that way. So my daughter has no issues, but I have her, she does drink the tea and she does drink the fiber when she eats. And so the point is absolutely maintain your health right now. And by controlling your insulin levels, by controlling your gut health, as Dr. Dieter was showing, those were the reasons you were seeing fingernails rotting. Your skin is endothelial and it's linked directly to your gut. And when your insulin's out of control and your blood sugar's out of control, you're feeding the wrong bacteria in the gut. And when you put the fiber back in, you feed the gut, it rebalances the immune system, as Dr. Dieter taught, and it also, you'll start to control insulin levels. So
Yeah.
absolutely, you want to take care of your health while you can. You change
Mhm.
your oil while your car is functioning appropriately. You brush your teeth, right? Actually, teeth rotting is not caused by lack of brushing. It's actually caused by insulin and blood sugar. So I hope that helps.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I want to add something really quickly, Amory, which is important for you guys to conceptualize this like that. Food is medicine. Food is medicine. And just like food is medicine, food can be poison. And I mentioned that these products are what you call nutraceuticals, made directly 100% from plants. They have nutritional value, but way more than nutritional value. They pack a punch in the health benefits. So you have to eat food every day, right? If you have to eat food every day, why not eat the right food that is medicine to you, to keep you healthy? Yeah. Prevention better than cure. So for Regina, if you don't need this is, and I want you guys to hear this. This is not a weight loss supplement. Weight loss happens as a result of addressing the energy deficiencies. Energy deficiencies result in insulin resistance that result in obesity and all these issues. So, yes, weight is just one of those diseases that are the consequences of an energy deficiency. So, this is really reversing the root cause of your illness, and then that results in these other things. So,
Mhm.
look at it like that. Food is medicine. You're supposed to eat food every day. Why don't you eat the right food to stay healthy? And don't look at this as a weight loss issue. If your metabolic issue is not weight, there are other issues that this can help safeguard or keep from going downhill.
Mhm. And combined, the people on the screen, we've probably worked with 4,000 people total on this system. And we don't have anyone who has disappeared from using this. Everyone still exists. No one is losing weight that they don't have to lose. What people often find, people who think they do not have 1 ounce to lose, they might have some skinny fat, visceral fat that's choking out some of their organs that they can't see. They can't see it when they stand on a scale, but when they use this system, that your body handles that. I want to interview Dr. Festus, Dr. Tiffany. I have on the screen too. Dr. Tiffany, before I turn off his mic again, would you mind just introducing yourself we have another physician here speaking, and then we have Dr. Festus, a pharmacist. I have to ask you to unmute, sorry.
Yeah, I thought I unmuted. My mistake. So hello. I am a double board certified physician in family medicine and now lifestyle medicine, but I practiced family medicine for 20 years. So I clearly understood writing prescriptions and following the algorithms. Unfortunately, that's what I knew to do. But after a while, that became something I didn't want to do anymore. People weren't looking healthy. I wasn't enjoying my life. I wasn't enjoying what I was doing, and they weren't enjoying it. So I figured, shoot, I want to do something I love. So I went into lifestyle medicine, and just like Dr. Dieter says, our food is our medicine. Our lifestyle is our medicine. Somebody likes to say that it's not in my DNA, it's in my dinner. So literally, we have the power to take back control of our health. So once I figured that out, I became certified in metabolic health, and I've been helping people with these products. I've been able to help more people get off of medicines than I ever did prescribing medications. How about that? Help more people reverse conditions than I ever did for 20 years. But not only that, I was able to leave my traditional medicine practice to just do this. Being able to do that and having enough money to live is a nice plus. But more importantly, it's about being able to help people reclaim their health and take back control. So I'm loving this, every minute of it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we have Dr. Festus as well. Also, we use the product. That's how we found you. Dr. Festus is a physician. I'm going to ask you to unmute
Yes.
Dr. Festus.
What's your initial?
Tell us what, I know you have a little bit of background.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I'm at work now, but I always cannot miss this because it's so important and I take it deeply at heart. Thank you, Dr. Kenny, Dr. Dieter, and Anna-Marie. You guys are awesome. Honestly, I am so impressed that the value of this because I used to have sleep apnea for 13 since 2013. I've been I needed to have a CPAP, and then Later, I found this Aura appliance that I always wear at night. I've wore that Aura appliance for 12 years. And that Aura appliance, if I didn't wear it, before I sleep, I'll actually sleep just for a short while, wake up, and then I'll actually snore all through my sleep. I'll wake up, my hands are all numb. I'll be very exhausted and find it difficult to go back to sleep. So when I started this mostly because I heard about that helping sleep apnea. And when I started, I took it for about a month. Then I started feeling the energy I was feeling. I realized, okay, well, this can help. Now I took off my Aura appliance. Ever since I took off, it's been almost 4 months. Now, I have not needed to put my Aura appliance on. I sleep very well. I sleep very well. So long as I take my balance before my last meal of the day, I will sleep just like a baby. And I wake up very energized, ready to go. And this has been good. I used to need to drink so many coffee, espressos all day to keep my energy going. But now, ever since, I have not drunk any coffee. I have not. So it's been, to me, I take it to heart. That's why I can't stop talking about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Festus. It's a pharmacist in Dallas, in the Dallas area, Fort Worth area. So we're so glad to have you. Thank you so much for jumping on. And one of the things I love, Festus, like I'm on my night walk. That's what I do. He's post meal walk. And I have Johnny Grandison. I know you're at a birthday party tonight. I appreciate you coming by to jump on. Johnny and I have known each other for several years now, and I had reached out to Johnny, also reversed sleep apnea. But tell us some about your other results and also what you've seen as you've helped other people on this system, Johnny.
Yeah, most definitely. For us, we've been in this space for over 20 years of just, helping people. Thought we were on a nutritional track. Fruits and vegetables we kind of look at as kind of foundational to one's diet in terms of being healthy. And so we were kind of on that track for, many years. And, my wife used to joke with me because I was telling her I was in shape, and she would grab my belly and say, you know what, round is not a shape. I jokingly say that once we heard about this protocol, we said we'll take it. And believe it or not, we understood. I'm an engineer by degree as well, and I understood that you can't change 10 or 15 different things at once and understand what was the one thing that made the difference. And so we intentionally only added this protocol to our regimen. That meant that if I wasn't eating a certain way, wouldn't start. If I wasn't exercising a certain way, would not start. And so in just the first 30 days, I lost like 10 pounds simply just sipping on this tea and drinking the fiber and adding the fasting to my regimen. And I was like, that was actually pretty simple. And then we start being on calls like this. We start talking to people and being on, phone calls. In the second 30 days, when I thought I was going to add some exercise, I didn't get around to that, but I still lost another 10 pounds and 2.5 inches simply following this protocol. And I was meeting people that I would see on these videos and just listen to the stories where they had lost not only 10 to 12, 30 pounds, they were lost over 100 pounds. And so I thought that was pretty remarkable because it wasn't just one person, it was multiple people over and over and over again. So it gave me an opportunity to see the fact that it was very consistent and the fact that it was helping our bodies work more properly. And so as we've been continuing to do this, as Marie said, I was able to get off my CPAP machine, which was a big deal in this household. But I also lost I went from a size 42-inch waist to now I'm down under size 36, all following the same protocol. And it's allowed us to share the same information to where now we're seeing people who've been on medication for years and years able to get off. We're seeing people who have had a diagnosis, and because they thought it was hereditary, they wouldn't make any changes. But simply following this protocol, we've been able to help many people change their situation just like it's done for us.
Skin tags gone. Johnny's wife got rid of like skin tags on her neck that she just thought she had because they were hereditary. Those are gone. One of the key pieces that I notice, and we all see this, is people look 10 years younger. So if we haven't seen them in a couple of months and you see someone again, say 90 days later, we're like, oh my gosh, people keep looking like they're aging in reverse. There's a question, a hand raise if you want to type, if you're able to type, be able to type your question in the chat, feel free to do that, or I could take you off mute, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, Amri, will you take her off mute? That is my friend and invitee, Dr. B. Tazong Fomenden. She's actually a lifestyle medicine physician in the South Carolina area, and I told her about this to join and listen to the science. I'm interested in hearing what she wanted to say. If you're able to, Dr. B, just unmute yourself and ask us the question.
Actually, can you hear me?
Yes, we could.
That was a wonderful presentation, Dr. Dieter, and everybody else that has spoken. I just wanted to throw in something because I've been in the lifestyle medicine space for at least 13 years now, and I can tell you that it's the most beautiful way to practice medicine because you actually make a difference in people's lives. And that's why when I spoke with Dr. Dieter, I was like, yep, that's right along my alley. I'm happy to jump in. So I wanted to throw in something to get people thinking more and more because, the whole thing about the insulin resistance is amazing. There's something else to that, when your body is not in proper shape and you have obesity and all those things, you have what we call chronic inflammation. So the way I describe it to people, it's like your body is on fire. If you're on fire, there's nothing that is spared on your body. And when people take care of their weight and their insulin resistance and everything, they will tell you it's almost like somebody turned down the fire. If you have patients with chronic pain issues, when they control their insulin and they control the inflammation, even without medications, pain becomes significantly less. And a lot of other things, women going through perimenopausal period and I'm thinking that this is something that should be pushed, especially with people going through those life changes because they don't even realize it and their bodies are acting up and acting out. And this would be a nice way to get them out of trouble because if you can skip this transition stage without getting into a lot of trouble, you can do really well for a long time because most people run into trouble right around their 40s, 50s. If you can help people get over that part of life, it'd be wonderful. And then, you mentioned something about your wife having the skin tags. I also happen to be practicing dermatology because I kind of got in the back door through that one, and I've been doing it for about 2.5 years. And that's one of the quick ways I always tell patients because they come in like, can you fix the skin tag and stuff? And I'm like, I can fix it, but I really cannot fix it. I can take off a few things and just charge you some more money, or you can go home and do some work because it is directly tied to insulin resistance. There are other things that cause it, but a lot of people you can see, it's called acanthosis nigricans. When you have excess insulin production in response to high blood sugar levels, the insulin doesn't just come out by itself. It's attached to something we call an insulin-like growth factor. And so this thing causes excessive growth on your skin. And I'm so happy you said that because I was looking at one of the pictures that they showed, one of the ladies who lost weight, and I saw one of the pictures, she had skin tags, the other one, she was fine. And so I'm telling patients, if you really want to fix this thing, you want to work on your insulin resistance because once you correct the root problem, the problem no longer exists. I just wanted to share those few things. I am looking forward to working more on this stuff with Dr. Dieter and anybody else that is interested. I'm excited about this. Thank you.
Where do you practice in South Carolina, Doc?
I am in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Okay, I'm in I'm probably, man, I'm like 2.5 hours, maybe no, probably 3.5 from Charleston, 4. So you're what, probably another hour or two north?
Charleston is about 2.5 hours from us. Actually, it's like a triangle.
Gotcha.
We are right by the ocean, so we are like everybody's a certain 2.5 hours away from us. Charleston, Columbia, they're all kind of 2.5 hours. Where exactly are you, sir?
I'm in St. Augustine, Florida.
Oh, okay, I know where that is. So that may be about 3.5 hours. Yeah, because it takes me it may be about 3.5, 4 hours from us. Yeah.
We'll have to connect. I'd love to meet you.
Yes, sir. Me too. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. All right. Any other questions too? Yeah, so that's what Johnny, I was taking you off of mute too. You have several partners in the greater Charleston, South Carolina area as well. So that's a hot spot for us. Thank you.
Yeah, we're doing, and that whole low country area is an area whereby we're, starting some concentrations of just helping people. We spent 10 plus years in those areas, and we could just see the need, and many of us can see the needs not only in our immediate families, but surrounding areas as well. And so, we implore you, the things that you've learned on this call, we really want you to, take a bold stance and be able to just share and let someone else know that there is a possibility they can change their lives naturally. And so that's what we do.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions that we can answer. Diane Weaver's on. She has an amazing story as well. It's one of the worst. Yeah, the worst stats on metabolic disease. Wow. Okay, how do you see that question, Dr. Dieter? How do you differentiate between these products and having someone just have more soluble fiber and mate?
All of these are more soluble fiber and mate. I think that's a good question for Dr. Kenny. I've been speaking.
Doc, I'm so sorry. I did not hear that. I apologize.
How do you differentiate between these products and having someone taking just soluble fiber and mate, like the over-the-counter mate? I think that's a good question for you.
Oh, yeah. So it's, well,
Answer.
Anne-Marie would know this too really well, and Dr. Tiffany. The way they process it, the chlorogenic acid content is like it's I've read 375 times
300,
higher
yeah.
than this.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's the way they do it. They third-party test it. That's another thing we didn't really cover, but every batch is third-party tested for herbicides, pesticides, mold, mildew, bacteria. There's saponins in it, which also suppress LPS, which help with leaky gut that you were explaining, or dysbiosis of the gut. Theobromine, it calms you down. This is what people grab for when they want chocolate, when they're stressed, is that theobromine calms them, opens the blood vessels, helps with mental clarity, focus. It's truly, there's no comparison by far.
Dr. Kenny, the only thing I would add to that is the way the system sets up, it allows people to be consistent. So let's say someone could just go get soluble and insoluble fiber. I'm telling you, someone would go do this and they would be really motivated for about 3.5 days. And then they'd be like, that was too hard. Well, let's say someone's taking Metamucil or Benefiber. We know 0 people who have reverse type 2 diabetes with Metamucil. 0 people. I've never met anyone who's done that. No one can claim that. The can of Metamucil says this is only designed to be used for a very short period of time. People have been using this fiber blend for 30 years. We've seen it duplicatable, it's repeatable. There's science behind that we can show in clinical research, people reducing their A1C, their triglycerides, their inches around their waist. So that's probably the primary difference, Flavia, that we see, is that there's clinical consistent research backing it, and that we've just seen, there's 1 million people that have used this system, and people who are consistently use it are consistently getting off of all lifetimes of medication.
Also, too, yerba mate is not in the physician's desk reference. Unimate is. Balance is. So that's when a doctor prescribes a drug. You can look this right up, which is really funny because a lot of the customers will go into their doctor and they're transformed and they're like, doctors are like, what the heck? And then you tell them you're drinking a tea and it sounds kind of ludicrous, right? And they're going, well, look it up. It's in the PDR. And then all of a sudden you get a conversation with a medical doctor, a nurse practitioner, a holistic doctor, and that you never even had before. So
Can I add something to that?
please.
So with Metamucil, you're only dealing with 1 fiber strand. So there's 7 fiber blends with the balance we have, and there's a multivitamin. And let me just be fully transparent. Before I actually left my traditional practice, I put patients on Metamucil, as well as told them to get a yerba mate supplement. I did, because I wanted to actually see, was I going to see the same type of results? Followed up their labs. Now, of course, this isn't a double-blind study, right? But followed up with their labs in 3 months, I didn't see any of the stuff. And not only on top of that, they didn't want to keep it up. Metamucil is not the same. Doesn't taste the same, doesn't feel the same. Yerba mate by itself tastes very bitter. It does. So this formulation takes out all the other stuff, the 5-step purification process, but at the same time, it has a taste to it to where it's not just bitter. And so people are able to be more consistent. You have the sustainability.
It's a great example. And Tillman of at Oxford, one of the nurses that we work with, her husband, someone said, get more fiber. 10 years ago, he was using Metamucil, not as prescribed, but he was using Metamucil every day for 10 years. He had high cholesterol, high triglycerides. He had all of the blood work metric off after 10 years of regularly using Metamucil. And within 6 weeks of this, all of his blood work was normalized, even though 10 years, a decade of Metamucil. So we're just seeing a difference. Dr. B, yeah, Phil, do I have to unmute you? Let me see. Did you have another question?
Yes.
Yes, so I just wanted to point out too that, I was conversing with Dr. Jada the other day, and I told him that when we're taking care of people, it's not just the people. We have to help them with their thought process, because until somebody can mentally correct their behavior, they cannot physically correct it. And so a lot of these things, a lot of the other things that people use, they pose a barrier to care. For example, if you're using Metamucil and let's say you're having diarrhea, who wants to be having diarrhea every day? Who wants to? I mean, it's just not practical. And I had a patient, as you go through life, if you listen to your patients, you learn a lot. I've had patients tell me that's not conducive to normal everyday living, and then that wakes you up from sleep because, for example, you prescribe something and they're like, I can't do that every day. That's ridiculous. And so you have to help patients. If it's something that is easy for patients to comply with, they will comply with it. If it's just drinking it as a tea and as a supplement that doesn't completely disrupt or upset their day, they will do it, and they will do it consistently. And especially if it's working, they'll be happy to follow through with it. So I think that, and then also a lot of the other products, there are things that we have a concept of that is not really workable for the body itself, because the human body is so intelligent and we don't give it enough credit. The body knows exactly how to behave. So when we put things in our bodies in the way that are not designed for the body to handle or absorb them, they don't work. So they may be the right concept, but they may be the wrong implementation for the human body. So I suspect that one of the things that makes this product work really well is that it's designed in with the human body functionality in mind, so that the body can actually make use of it. It doesn't just run through your system.
That's a great statement. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. It sounds like the questions have been answered that have been listed, and Dr. Dieter is available. The doctors are available. Any follow-up that you have after it, things that you think of that come to mind. As we close this meeting tonight, first, one of the things I want to say is we're doing a session again on a Sunday evening at the same time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. If you thought of someone when you were on here that you would like them to hear this message, come to it Sunday or Monday. We'll be doing these sessions again and able to answer open questions that you have. We don't have enough people sharing our message, and we're looking for more people to spread the word, because if we don't have the opportunity to intervene and tell someone that there's a natural alternative, that they don't have to use pharmaceuticals to address the symptoms, they won't know. They won't know about this. Any other closing comments as well? I'm going to leave it to
And
both.
Maurice, someone was asking where to get it.
Yeah, Lydia. So what you want to do is reach out to the person who invited you. Do you know who asked you to come to this call tonight? They'll have a discount code, and it will give you the same price that we get it, so I pay $5 a day. I take 3 of these packets each day. It's about $1.70 a packet. So I skip breakfast and drink the concentrated yerba mate tea. Then I have one either before or after lunch, and with dinner I will have the fiber blend. Thank you. This answered so many questions that you didn't even know you had. I love that. Thanks. That's a great way to say it. I appreciate it. Great. Thanks. Yeah, reach out to the person. Thank you. And then Dr. Dieter, Dr. Kenny, Dr. Tiffany, do you want to close us out? Give us some final words. What I'm gonna do is remove me. Dr. Tiffany, any final words that you wanted to leave the folks with?
Sure. I mean, considering that almost one person is dying of a diabetes complication every minute, we have too many people. And that's the end stage of insulin resistance. So way before that, 10 to 15 years, we have people struggling and they need some help. If you know someone and you actually can see that person on their way to that hospital bed being that next statistic, I can't even say my words, but being a next statistic, you can see them and you want to have something that actually helps them when they're at a point to where they feel like they can't make that choice. They can't make those decisions. These products are doing that for so many people. And if you know that that's you and you've been trying everything and you feel helpless, that's when these products actually help people do the things, do the steps, make the lifestyle changes, start working on their mindset to do the things that are going to help reverse these conditions. So it really just becomes, are you ready to make that decision? Are you ready to take that step? so many people have. We have so many great results. And so we'd love to have you with us, and we'd love to have your voice.
Thank you so much. Dr. Dieter, did you have any final words that you wanted to close us out with?
Yes, thank you, Anne-Marie. I'll just echo what you said. We're doing this 3 times a week, Sunday, Monday, and Friday at the same time. The statistics, I'll close with a somber tone. The statistics are that 9 out of every 10 people in the United States has an energy deficiency, metabolic dysfunction, whether they know it or not. 9 out of every 10 people. And I started, in that talk, I said, if we had a time machine and we went back 100 years ago, 1 generation ago, these diseases will not exist. We now have information that is powerful. If you have a loved one or you suffer from any of those diseases, you should not continue to suffer when you know there is a solution. We, with this knowledge, when I gleaned of this information gleaned of this information this year, I made a conscious decision. I could no longer practice medicine that way. This is so life-changing. I could be involved in giving people life. And so many of us on this panel are on that mission to give as many people life, to help as many people reclaim their health again. And we want to light up the world. I'm a child of God, I'm a Christian. And the Bible says when you have a light, you don't put it under the table. You put it on the table to shine. When you know that there's something that is good, you want to tell the world. So we need help. We need you to be spread. We need you if you came on this call today and you're interested in helping us, be part of that mission to help as many people reclaim their health again. Please join us. We need you today. If you have a family member, a friend, or what have you, to tell them about the next Zoom call so that they're aware of this life-changing information that could impact their lives forever. So that's what I will end with. And thank you guys for being here. And I will yield back to you, Anne-Marie.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Kenny, any final words that you wanted to leave us with?
No, absolutely. And thank you, for you physicians out there, right? I mean, honestly, I'm a chiropractor. I was trained in a lot of these things, more of a natural approach. And I just honor you, all of you. I know the sacrifices you make. I know the arrows you take, but when you know it's the right thing to do, God bless you. Thank you. Honored to work with you.
Thank you. We'll get you the recording. I think Mary Wellman asked, how do we get the recording? Just whoever invited you, reach out to them and we'll have the recording for you. Thank you guys so much and good night.